Judith has now joined us.
Oh, there's Judy. Okay. And Siri.
So I believe in terms of the committee members, we are just missing Ginny and Linda at this point.
Okay. Do we want to go ahead and start and then invite them in when they show?
Looks like we certainly have a quorum, 7, so I think it's safe to proceed.
Okay. If you want to scroll that down to the call to order. Okay, there we are. Okay, working off my old list here. Scott, we know, is not going to be able to be with us. I'm here. Linda Clapp is not. Walt Fraser?
Here.
And Judy Glenn?
Here.
Jenny Simons? Barbara Hughes, we knew is not going to be here. Yvette Miner?
Here.
Mike Neely?
Here.
Nace Nickel?
Here.
And John Deloso?
Here.
Okay, let the record show then that Linda and Jenny, Scott and Barbara are not with us today. All right. So if you want to scroll down for me. All right, I think we can start right with the library deputy director introduction. That was a tongue twister.
Thank you, Janice. I would like to introduce everyone to Erica Thibault, who's our new deputy director. Erica, would you like to say a couple of words about yourself?
Sure. Some of you I think I've met already in previous meetings. For those of you who I have not met, thank you. I'm really glad to be here. I'm very excited to join Sonoma County Library. I'll just give you a little bit of background about myself. Before coming to Sonoma, I was a Western Area Manager at Los Angeles Public Library, where I oversaw programs and services at 12 branch libraries in an area that was similar demographically to Sonoma. So 101 square miles, about 530,000 people, and a staff of about 200. So I'm really excited to be here, and I look forward to working with all of you.
And we're very excited to have her.
Nice to have you. And we do want to assure you that 101 temperatures are not normal for Sonoma County.
Good, because my house that I'm renting has no air conditioning.
No, most of us do not. And usually it's not needed. So you're okay. All right. I thank you for including the library reimagining plan. If you remember, that was the reason that our meeting in May was postponed to allow time for the library to complete this. Anne, is there somebody that would like to talk about what you guys came up with and sort of give us a thumbnail of what this is, how this is going to affect us?
Sure. So as you know, we started more of a traditional strategic planning process in late 2019. We were doing open houses at every library location and staff meetings with every library staff group. We got about halfway through that, and then everything shut down because of the pandemic. So then when we months later decided to go back to the process, we realized we needed to reimagine it, because life had changed so dramatically for many, many people in our community. And the other part is that we were getting input from people who are already library supporters and library users, but we weren't necessarily reaching the ones who are not currently library users. So we started a new process of virtual listening sessions We had a stakeholder session, session for the staff, and we did different groups that we brought together to hear about how the pandemic had affected them, how their lives had changed, and what needs did they see going forward. We also did one-on-one interviews and a survey specific to teams. So we got a huge amount of input, and it was very, very thoughtful, very appropriate to the way everyone's lives have changed. We were able to kind of condense all of that, and then our staff developed goals and objectives from that, which you will see in the plan. The thing that impresses me the most about this is that we were asking people not necessarily to tell us what they wanted from the library, but just to share what their lives were like and what their needs were. And then we were able to fit that together with what we can do, what we would like to do for the community in terms of library services. The beautiful thing about it is that when you look at some of the goals that we put together, they echo the thoughts that began with the Measure Y campaign years ago. So children's services, teen services, classes and collections for school-age children, services for older people, for people with disabilities, more outreach to underserved communities, taking care of technology needs and creating welcoming spaces in our library buildings. These are all things that the citizens wanted in passing Measure Y. They wanted to make sure that we had money to accomplish, these needs. And these are things that you will see reflected in the Reimagining Plan. So many opportunities to take advantage of the support of the sales tax that we have. And we're really excited about the possibilities that this brings forward. What you see here is the summary of the plan, and then we are going to turn this over to Ray Hawley and his wonderful team to make it look really pretty so that we can share it with the community. Does anyone have questions or comments about the plan?
I do have a quick, it's a correction actually. On the one-to-one interview section, I'm listed down as CBI, and that's not the correct group that I was representing.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that. We will correct that.
I'll email you the correction.
Thank you. Ray, would you like to say anything about what your team is planning from here?
Certainly. What you saw was my rudimentary attempt at making this a little more visually appealing than a PDF of a Word document. Our design team is going to work on this. We're looking at sometime in July. We'll present this to the community through press releases, a website, things like that. We did get some late input from a couple of staff interest groups, and Director Hammond is taking a look at that. So we may be tweaking some of the goals and actions. And the one thing that we're probably going to do on the first page is we're going to remove the word plan. This is really the end of the beginning. As you see in Ann's introduction, this is our marching orders for a whole year of planning and studying to really truly reimagine the library before we move forward. So this is a big reflection of all the incredible input we got from the community, but we're really seeing this as a living document, something that we'll be revising regularly, and gave me instructions on Monday to start thinking about a quarterly report to the commission and to the public.
Thank you. I moved off my agenda here. Okay. Is there anything else then about the reimagining plan that we need to know or that is going to impact us?
Not at this time.
Not at this time. So it is a work in progress.
Yes.
Okay. Moving on then to the financials.
I have a question, and so to do this.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't.
Well, it's not really, well, I guess, yeah, it's a question. I wanted to know, I like visuals. So will there be pictures of like the director and so forth in this piece as you're developing it?
I'm sure we'll
Yes,
have.
we recognize that there's lots of different ways in which people receive information. And that's something that's important to us, is to provide photos, various visual cues that augment the text.
I have a question also.
Yeah, Judy.
There aren't any numbers attached to this. Are there going to be at some point?
What do you mean by numbers?
Dollars, like,
Oh,
how are we going to support this? What, how much money is going to go to each one of these areas? And then like a 5-year strategic plan that would show how we're going to develop our budgets around this.
Mm-hmm. Well, what we are doing, the first year is going to be largely devoted to planning and positioning, figuring out how we want to meet these goals. And then we will have a better idea of what kind of numbers we can put to them going forward. We do have a few things that we're moving ahead now, a couple of positions that the commission approved, which add to our capacity, and then some money toward technology and collections.
Okay, so at this point, there are no numbers associated with anything. This is going to be a year of planning and imagining.
Right.
Okay. Are there any other questions then before we move on to financials?
Chair Brokaw, this is Jaylene. I'm just wondering, I know we skipped over public appearances. Would this be a good time to acknowledge any public appearances if there are any?
Oh, yes, it would be. I didn't see anyone, so I just skipped right over that. Is there anyone here then from the public?
There weren't any written submissions for the meeting, so that I will confirm. I do see that we do have someone from the public, but they are not raising their hand to speak. So thank you for acknowledging that.
Okay, well, should they wish to speak, I hope they'll let us know. Okay, then moving on to financials. I don't see Randy. Is someone else going to be presenting the financials to us today?
Yes, unfortunately, I did not realize that Randy was on vacation this week. So he provided the regular financials, which I can walk through with you briefly. He is still working on the summary report that you had requested. And as soon as I have that, I can forward it to the committee. He will return next week.
Okay, all right.
So Jaylene, if you would like to open the financial report. Okay, so this is the same report that was presented to the Library Commission. And as of April, you can see that we were actually ahead of projections in terms of revenues for property tax and sales tax. And we're trending right about where we should be in terms of expenditures. So no big surprises there. Moving on, so special fund activity, this would be the property tax, the fund balance. Scrolling down, we have an anticipated property tax fund balance of a little over 11 million for this year. And then the next page shows the sales tax. And again, we're anticipating a little over 11 million. So we'll have a pretty healthy fund balance going into the new fiscal year. Those were voucher payments over 25,000, which the Library Commission likes to see each month. And that just reflects the usual things that are devoted to collections and technology. The construction at Roseland is a big one. And then some computer equipment and collections, as I mentioned, for that month.
Before you move on from that, let's back up to that one that you were just on. Are there any questions on any of those that are specific to sales tax revenue? Because this then comes from our Measure Y money.
Some of the construction at Roseland has been dedicated to Measure Y.
Oh,
And
okay.
some of the technology purchases as well, and some of the books and media subscriptions will be attributed to Measure Y.
I know that internet access has been increased at each of the libraries, because I know our Friends group was asked to pay
Right.
an additional amount to cover the Roanoke Park increase. Where does that fall in this particular, what the library is paying? Where does that fall and in all of this?
The internet access, I believe, has been attributed to property tax up until now, but if you look at the language of the Measure Y measure, it could go either way. It could be partially taken from sales tax.
Yeah, well, I wondered why we had not, given the surplus, gone ahead and used sales tax money to do that, as opposed to hitting up the small Friends groups.
Oh, you're talking about the Wi-Fi extension project.
Yes, the
I
Wi-Fi
think more of
extension.
the communications, the ongoing communications charges. Yeah, the Wi-Fi extension projects, yes, the Friends and the foundation largely supported those.
Mhm.
And why wasn't that charged to sales tax?
It was something that Sarah, you might have a better answer for that. I believe that the foundation initially wanted to cover as much of it as possible as one of their projects.
Yes, for this year's wish list, technology was a big ask from the library, and the foundation agreed to contribute a majority of the funding needed for the Wi-Fi extension program. And then they later on asked Friends groups to contribute also. So it was a foundation-led ask of the Friends groups.
Okay, I just wondered how our Friends group got pulled in on that.
That was initiated by the foundation.
Okay, I see Mr. Hauser's hand up.
Actually, it started in Sonoma Valley with their library advisory board, which controls funds that were donated there. There's a $800,000 fund that produces income. And so they started by saying, because our branch librarian was concerned that there were people trying to park close and things like that to get Wi-Fi during the COVID. And we were the first ones to do that in Sonoma Valley branch. And then everybody thought it was such a good idea that it started growing. And this was a feel-good donation from people is what it was. They said, this is a positive thing. And it just kind of grew.
Good.
I'm not sure that exactly answers the question. Why isn't this something that should be covered under Measure Y, rather than telling the Friends, if you want it, you're going to have to pay for it, which is what we were told.
It could have been covered under Measure Y. It could be covered different ways. This was not intended to be a do this or else. It was an opportunity for Friends and Foundation to participate in something that their branches needed. But we certainly could look at it in a different way for future needs. It's not something that was mandated by Measure Y.
I think if we're willing to pay over $100,000 for IP clocks, I think extending the Wi-Fi at the branches is more in tune with the wording and the law of Measure Y. I don't think that and in fact, I know for a fact that our Friends group was told, if you want this, you have to come up with money for it. And this is how much it's going to cost. And we ended up getting a Kiwanis grant that two of our members, or two different people, applied for, and that was how it was paid for by us. But the library had said, we're not going to pay for this.
Well, I'm not sure where that message came from, but I appreciate your feedback.
Because I could see, for example, excuse me, that under Measure Y it said expand access, and the Wi-Fi certainly does that.
Mm-hmm. It does.
Janice, this is John DeLosso. I have a question. I couldn't find the raise your hand icon, but
Oh,
ask a
yeah, we
question.
haven't got one of those yet.
Okay.
No problem. And I guess I'll throw this out to Director Hammond. So with a couple of different amounts you had put out there, or you, Ray, that there's a little over $20 million in excess, and we all know what in excess can really mean. Are there any plans for any of those funds, like, you know, which branch is in major need of getting some kind of an upgrade or anything like that? Or is there going to be a strategic planning session to say, well, okay, here's this money, how might we spend some of it?
Yes, thank you for that. There is a lot of that fund balance is already allocated to different purposes, different capital purchases that are going to be made. And some of it has to be withheld, 15% for Stabilization Fund that we keep as a reserve in case of anything drastic that happens. So there's actually not a huge amount that is still available for use, but as soon as the fiscal year closes and we know exactly what we're dealing with, then the Library Commission will review those funds and make some allocations at that point.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Quick question, and where do we stand on the audit for 1819?
That is almost done. I was just talking today, and there were some issues with the inventory that had kind of fallen between the cracks when we were going through this kind of rotating CFOs. But they've got that figured out now, and we expect to have it completed, I hope, by next week. And then I'm told that the 1920 audit will go very quickly after that. So
we still don't have a CFO, is that right? Didn't we have one that bailed at the last minute?
Yes, we are reopening that search.
So at the moment, we are still using County Financial Services. Is that correct?
Yes, we are. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Excuse me, Chair Brokaw, we do have a comment posted on the chat from Andy Eber. Would you like me to read that to the committee?
Yes, please.
Okay, so with 22 million in reserve, 11 million from sales tax, what is the library's plan for spending these dormant tax dollars? Has the library updated its facilities plan as it is required to? Why hasn't the Measure Y committee required the library to produce a capital replacement plan? Does the Measure Y committee really understand the numbers it's getting from Mr. Hawley? Thank you.
Good questions.
So we do have a plan for spending fund balance dollars, and as I mentioned, we'll be updating that plan as soon as the fiscal year closes and the commission can review where we are currently. With the facilities plan, we had started a new comprehensive facilities plan process right before the shutdown, and of course that was put on hold. But we are moving back to that now. We're about to reopen the comprehensive analysis of all of our locations and develop a plan that will guide us in what each location needs. And then we can put that into a plan and schedule it out so that we know exactly what the priorities are and how much things are going to cost. With the regarding the numbers submitted by Mr. Hawley, he sends them forward, but the numbers have been developed by the county administrative department that is doing our accounting right now.
Question.
Yes, Judy.
How many years will that facilities plan cover? Is there like a general plan and then every year it will be updated?
It's supposed to go every 3 years.
And when was the last time we did one?
The current plan expired in 2019.
Oh.
So we were already a little bit behind schedule in starting it when we were shut down by the pandemic.
So we don't have a facilities plan, and we haven't for 2 years. We don't have any audits that go since going back for 3 years, and we don't have a chief financial officer going back for what is it, a year and a half now? That doesn't strike me as a responsible administration. And I think especially since this group is supposed to oversee the spending of the sales tax money, there should be a whole lot more questions asked here.
But we haven't gotten to all the questions yet.
Chair Brokaw, we do have Yvette with her hand raised, and we
I'm
also
sorry,
have.
my screen only has 5 people up at a time. So if you're raising your hand and I'm not seeing you on the screen, I'm not seeing your hand. So just speak out, Yvette, please.
Yes, so I was going to ask in relation, when we did the funding for the refreshes, is that part of this as well? And so if that is the case, we did work on some of that, and we did earmark some monies for those different refreshes. And then the other thing is, I do wanted to get an update on the library archives and where we are in that process and what the money and the spending of that is, because I didn't quite see it in the budget.
Yep. So you're correct. We have been proceeding with library refreshes, and that is covered under the fund balance money from Measure Y. And we are, well, currently we're about to open Roseland Library. That's just about ready to go. And we have been doing the refresh for Central and for Guerneville. So those are in process. Regarding the archives, yesterday the County Board of Supervisors voted to approve funds to move the archives to another location. And so I'm working now with staff and with county staff to make that happen as quickly as possible. We have a location picked out, but we have not yet negotiated the lease. So I don't want to say any more specifics about it right now, but rest assured it's in process, and we'll get those materials moved to safety as quickly as possible.
Will that involve Measure Y funds?
Probably not.
Okay, that's fine.
And then also, is it possible for that information, what you can put out, can that be put out to the general public? Because I did receive some communication in regards to that. And so people feel like they're left in the dark right now. So if we can get that out to the public on a grand scale so that they can know what's going on.
All right, thank you for that. Yes, we'll work on that.
Thank you.
Chair Brokaw, we did have a follow-up comment posted on the chat from Mr. Andy Eber, if you would like me to read that.
Yes, please.
Okay. Why is the library administration keeping Measure Y Oversight Committee in the dark about the plans to use the very substantial reserve? Other tax measure oversight committees I'm familiar with work on a much closer and transparent basis with the public entities. Thank you.
Would someone like to answer that for us? Anne, are we being kept in the dark?
I don't believe you are being kept in the dark. We're sharing information as soon as we have it. So if there's anything more we can be doing, I'd love to hear about it, and we'll make those changes.
I know I do appreciate the fact that you have highlighted those things that are specifically sales tax expenses on this, because reading through it, it's much more visible to us what is being spent for Measure Y funds. And I'm not sure how else to address Andy's comment. I realize there are a lot of questions that we do have And not having a financial officer, I think definitely has caused us not to have all the information that we need
Yeah.
as quickly as we need it. So
And we're very
hopefully we'll get that one in place and things will be a little bit more transparent.
Yeah, that's our goal.
And also, I do appreciate, because I know we talked about it at the last meeting, was, designating out the Measure Y funds. And so we understand that. And again, to the public as a whole, they would not understand that the green is for Measure Y. So somewhere in there, a little, what is it called? My mind blanked. A little, dialogue of what the green stands for. This stands for Measure Y funds. So going forward, people can just look and say, I want to look for Measure Y funds. Oh, it's in green. Then they automatically know.
Mhm.
Or just some way to identify that sales tax expenses are Measure Y funds.
Okay.
If there are no more comments on this page, we'll move down to the next one.
Do we need to talk about property tax or should we go straight?
And property tax, since we really are not dealing with the income from that, we could probably just move right through to the ones that do apply to us.
Mhm.
That one is also property tax. And there we go, sales tax, budget tax.
On
So
that,
again,
Janice,
Yeah,
I
Mike.
noticed that the book budget, so far only $400 has been charged to books for Measure Y.
No, one of the things that I've been talking with Randy about is that the way the CFOs have done it in prior years is that, every quarter they would transfer charges from property tax to sales tax to make it, where it should be. And apparently those transfers have not been done yet. So he's going to catch all of that up and then provide the updated reports for us that I will share with you as soon as I get them.
Okay, the other question is, the last time we asked about the salary and benefits, is that now reflecting actual Measure Y slots, or is that still being done on a percentage?
That should be the actual slots.
Okay, and the other thing I noticed, our Medicare expenses seem to be significantly over budget. Is there a reason for that?
I will have to double check. I know a lot of
It's indicating here we're already at 151% of what was budgeted, so
Mhm.
we still have 2 more months to go.
Yeah, that's one of the things that is also covered partially under property tax. And so it may be that it's under budget in property tax and over budget in sales tax, but it all evens out. But that's something I will definitely review with Randy.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else see anything on here that is sending up a red flag?
Could we get details on the special departmental expenses and the other contract services? Because that way we can find out which part is programs.
Mhm. Sure, I'll make sure you get that.
It looks like we're going to have a surplus of about 3 million this year.
I would think so, yeah.
So that's a total of 14 million we'll have
Mhm.
built up in Measure Y.
Right.
Judy?
Yes, I'm wondering if when we get a new CFO, if it would be possible to create a report that shows the budget, income and expense, and shows for the expenses in particular, property tax and sales tax side by side. So like if the total expenses for some item is $1 million, give us a breakdown of what's budgeted for sales tax and what's budgeted for property tax. I don't think that would be very difficult, but I don't know.
Yeah.
And I don't think we should necessarily ask Randy for it. Hopefully we will have a CFO, but I think that it would help me anyway to better understand how does sales tax compare to property tax in, you know, many areas.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you have to do it manually, and it's fairly, I've done some parts of it, but it's fairly tedious.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Well, and one of the things is that we're looking at is trying to make sure that the Measure Y funds are used as additional expenses,
Yes.
not to supplant
Yes.
what was already at once a property tax expense. And so, because that was the public's intent by passing this, is to make sure that we increased services and facilities and programs.
Got it.
All right. Anything else that pops up to anyone here? Come on, I need to know. That everything looks like we're staying within the budget.
Yep.
Fairly well.
I just want to say thank you, Ann, for being on the hot seat.
Yes. You'll have to have a chat with Randy about his vacation scheduling.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. And these then are just bequests.
Yeah.
These are made for specific specific uses of the library, or do they come as an open pocketbook?
These are mostly allocated bequests
Allocated to a branch or.
or a program. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is not really
Not really applicable to us. No. So gifts and donations again,
Again, yeah.
same kind of thing.
And
Okay.
that's everything all together, our cash balance summary.
All right. Okay, are there any questions then while we have Ann here on the hot seat in terms of finances that we can throw at her? Or are we good to wait until Randy puts together that very specific, I had hoped that they would have the specifics that we wanted of Measure Y programs and expenses, but apparently that has not happened.
We're going to have to
I
wait
just
until
say-
the next.
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead, Mike.
No, go ahead, Maria. Well, that's okay.
I was just going to say, are we going to have to wait until the next Measure Y meeting before we get those numbers from Randy?
No, I will send them to you as soon as I get them.
Okay, perfect.
Because with the figures we have now, we couldn't really say whether the money's spent properly or not.
No, it is not, it's not detailed enough for what we need to evaluate.
Right.
And will he be here the next time we convene so that we can grill him instead?
Yes, I will make sure of that.
Okay, Judy, did you have a question?
Just a comment. I appreciate that you included the Oversight Committee guidelines, roles, and responsibilities in this package. And I think it would be great to include it every time so that we remember. But it does say, I reviewed it again today, that we are responsible to review the financial statements in comparison to budget, but we do not have responsibility for the budget. So it seems to me if we're seeing a report that shows the budgeted numbers and then what the actual numbers are, that's a pretty fair review or fulfillment of our responsibility. And yes, we should question the items that go over or are way under, but I think that it seems to me that is the bigger focus of our job. You know, the commission okays the budget. And I don't think our job is to question the budget. But as I think Mike said, you know, we need to see that, or Janice said, you know, we need to see that we're not supplanting regular expenses, property tax expenses with Measure Y, and that, you know, that Measure Y is falling within what it's supposed to do. But I think our guidelines as to the amounts are spelled out in the budget. And I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts about that.
No, I also appreciated seeing that and was going to mention that as well. It was nice to see that as a reminder of what our rules and regulations, our role really is.
And I think we are expected to oversee what the commission does, not just rubber stamp it.
Yes. Okay. Ray, since you included that roles and responsibilities review, is there anything you want to highlight in that for us to pay particular attention to?
I put that together at Commissioner Doyle and Director Hammond's request. You know, the one thing I would say is, you know, Mike and I had some very healthy and robust conversations the last 2 or 3 years about how Measure Y expenditures were allocated. The first 2 years, this committee created a report that had some exceptions in it. And last year was our first year of a report with no exceptions. And, you know, my perspective on this is it is true that it's the library staff role to create the budget, the commission's role to approve it. And then it's this committee's role and I've seen this in many situations of school bonds, all kinds of things. There's a citizens oversight committee that asks tough questions and pushes back if they disagree. But it's an arrears conversation, not an advanced conversation. It's our role to be transparent with you and to report to you regularly. And it's your role to say, what about this and what about that? And then we meet in the middle.
Thank you. Any other comments regarding this?
I have a question. Where did the, is this document that you came up with, where did that come from? What's the source material for it? Is it the expenditure plan?
Yes.
Isn't it in the Measure Y wording, right?
Yeah, it's in the ordinance. After the ordinance was approved by the voters, it was approved in it. I'm not sure that's the right term, but it and the expenditure plan were approved and adopted by the Library Commission. So this comes right out of that, word for word.
I guess I know I'm on a couple other oversight committees, and we always go through transitions with people and, you know, change people leaving and coming and so forth. So it might be a good idea, you know, at the start of the year to maybe just send that out as a refresher so that we can all take a look. And then if there's any transition after that, to send it out again, because, you know, we get used and complacent, you know, with the knowledge we have, but it's always a good idea to go back and just take a look at that. And so, you know, if some people delete emails and then they're trying to find it. So just resending that would be very helpful as well. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, I think incorporating this with any new individuals' materials would be very appropriate at the beginning of every year when we have new committee members or when we have replacements, as we are going to have.
I like it being a part of the agenda. That's totally fine as well.
You like it readily accessible each time, right? Well, I copy it off, so I have it. All right. Any other comments on this before we move on? Okay. Our committee member update. I understand from Scott that he is resigning his position on the Oversight Board as representative for Petaluma. So the current commissioner for Petaluma, hopefully, is handling his replacement or looking for a replacement. I have not heard yet that there has been one named. Is the commissioner from Petaluma still Heaven Ridge?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Mhm.
Okay, so I assume Scott had notified him directly, and so he will be on the hunt looking for someone else to fill his position. Losing Scott also means we're losing a vice chair. So at the moment, I'm not ready to hold an election or that, but I think at our next meeting, we have to be in position to select someone to serve as vice chair. So that needs to go on the agenda for next year or next month, next meeting.
Won't we be doing new officers altogether sometime in the next meeting?
No, I don't think we would. Well, when did we do it last time?
We always did it in August or September, the first meeting of the year.
Okay. Well, we're going to have one more meeting of this year at when we complete the budget in May, June, the end of after June. So probably toward the end of July, we're going to need to hold the final meeting and review the expenses for the year. So then when we move into August, then the next meeting after that would be the one when we would elect, I think. Does that make sense?
Well, we won't have the July financials at the end of July because they usually have to be presented to the commission first.
Okay, so we've got, I'm looking here. All right. The fiscal year officially ends end of June, right? June 30. Okay, so it has to be presented to the commission then before it comes to us, before we see it.
I think so. I don't know. Ray could, or Ann could say that.
Yeah,
that
it should go
correct?
to the commission first.
Okay, so it would be almost August then before we could meet. And maybe at that point, yes, will we have a full board at that point, a full commission or Measure Y committee? We should. Okay, I think that's something that we'll ponder and see where that is. All right, so, well, basically this all ties right in with a regular scheduled meeting. And I know they wanted us to regularly schedule, but I think given we're at the mercy of the library and the staffing there and their schedules and our schedules, it's been extremely difficult to come up with a standard meeting week. So my suggestion is that we keep it loose as we have to try to accommodate the library schedule as well as our own. Is that okay with everyone?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
I agree.
Yeah, we, I think if we set a week, we're going to find out that it's going to have to be changed no matter where we set it. So let's look for the month that we need to schedule something in. And I'm thinking August,
Right.
toward the middle to back end of August for our next meeting. And then we will determine the date and time. And maybe at that point, Anne, do you think it's possible we could be back to in-person meetings?
I think so.
That would be delightful. Not that I don't love seeing everybody in Zoom, but that's getting old. So, all right. So let's shoot for sometime in August, depending on the library's schedule and whether the financials have been approved by the commission at that point. And then when you get the report to us that Ray's preparing of the specific expenses related to the sales tax, if anyone has any specific questions about those, guess you could send them off to me through the library and we'll try to address them or at least find the answers, if that is okay.
I do have a question. I do like the concept of the meetings being recorded. So if we go back to in-person, will there be a possibility of having the meetings recorded and then allowing the public to be able to still view that? Because there is a lot of information that comes through here. And then if there's any issues or anything like that, they can always go back to the meeting and view that if they have questions. Because even though a lot of people are tired of Zoom, it did provide a lot of people an opportunity to come and speak their voice and have their voice heard. So can we possibly think about recording the meetings in person so that the public can view for any questions they have?
Are our meeting minutes available to the public?
Oh, yes, have to be.
So Yvette, would that suffice to have the minutes as opposed, since it would be after the fact anyway, they wouldn't be able to contribute during the meeting.
That would be up to the public and what they say, because they can come back and say the minutes are not enough. They might want to see the whole dialogue. So I don't know.
Okay, because the minutes are an abbreviated.
We have the capacity to video the meetings here at RPHQ. We couldn't necessarily do it if you were meeting in a branch or another location.
I think we should.
Deborah has her hand. I want to hear what she has to say.
Actually, this is about something else. I just wanted to apologize to the chair. I moved this meeting because I thought you would want to see the reimagining plan. So the library was perfectly happy to have it on your originally scheduled date. And I thought that the reimagining plan would be helpful for this meeting. I also thought that we were going to have the audited financials. So I was wrong. Sorry about that.
No problem.
But as far as, as far as having the minutes open to the public, certainly we're willing to do that. Most of the time, these meeting minutes are fairly detailed anyway, but I will hand that back to the staff.
I mean, by the Brown Act, isn't that always required?
Mm-hmm. Minutes, sure.
Mm-hmm. But Yvette is correct in that just by reading the minutes, you don't necessarily get the discussion or the nuances that go with the topic. Okay. Going back to the idea of a location, if we are able to meet in person, is your wish then to go back to the central library and use the meeting room there? Or did you want to try something different?
I would prefer Central to Roanoke Park.
Okay, it probably is more central for those of you that are coming from further north. And the only issue I have is having to pay for parking, but I can work around that. Okay, so I think what we'll do then is we'll plan for a meeting in August at the Central Library using the meeting room there. We'll set the date and time via a doodle poll as we have in the past. And then hopefully we will have the report from Randy within the next several weeks that we can look at closely. Any other comments, questions? Everybody okay with where we are?
Yep.
All right. Is it okay then to adjourn by acclamation? We ready to adjourn this meeting? Looks like we did it in an hour or less. Always my goal.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Judith, you have a question?
No, I was just
Oh,
moving.
okay. It's like everybody.
All right. So everybody is okay with adjourning. And then you will get, the next communique you get from us should be Randy's report.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you. Oh, were we gonna just do reports from the libraries? From the individual library? I know, Roseanne, we're opening up and it's a lot of good activity going, you know, normally we would do those reports out. So I just want to make sure.
Well, we haven't done those in the past, but I would love to hear what's going on at Roseland, if you want to share that with us.
Yeah, well, we're going to be doing a soft opening here in June, and then the full opening will be later. And so there's video that have gone out about what the library is going to look like. And so people are really excited about, you know, the new look of the library system. And I don't know if Ray want to add on to that, or Ann.
Sure, I can add on. We are construction projects being what they are. We have slipped a little bit. It won't be in June. Our soft opening will be, I think, the second week in July. And I think next week, the 23rd, I believe I heard, we're going to get our final, we'll hopefully get our final inspection and a temporary occupancy permit so we can start moving in furniture and books and people and things like that. It's going to be great.
I'm going to have to go check out Roseland. I have not been over there and I have been remiss.
Definitely take a field trip when it's all done for everybody to come over and check it out. It's really great and awesome. And, you know, I look forward to the future of the additional plans that we have for Roseland.
That's wonderful. Anyone else have anything then about their own personal libraries they wish to share? All right. I know I'm just glad to see ours open on a more regular basis and you don't have to make an appointment anymore. That, for me, that was off-putting to have to plan and make an appointment. I just like to show up. Okay. Seeing none, we will go ahead then and adjourn this meeting. Thank you, Jaylene, for keeping us on track.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.